All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Real Raw Relationships Unfiltered. All right, so today's guest is JP Marsh. He is a 42-year-old single girl dad, carpenter, and co-parenting coach who took his pain and turned it into fucking purpose. After growing up emotionally disconnected, spiraling in toxic relationship after toxic relationship, we know how that goes, right? And then numbing himself through alcohol and chaos, JP hit rock bottom. Then fucking built something better, right? We got to break it down before we can build it up. When his daughter was born and life threw one heartbreak after another, he finally made a choice: break the cycle or pass it on, right? So now he's living proof that healing is possible. He's co-parenting like a damn adult, blending families without the drama and showing up for his daughter with a level of emotional leadership most men never touch. We're talking about healing after father wounds, owning your story, and what it really takes to create a co-parenting relationship that actually fucking works. Now, if you're ready to get real, get raw, let's go.
Welcome to the carnival. I'm the ringleader now. Won't hear a sound at all. It's out very loose, 6 feet up.
Ted, I gotta ask you, what was harder, raising a daughter or unlearning 30 years of emotional constipation, essentially?
I kind of had to do them at the same time. And so I started the co-parenting thing and changing my, perception, reality, lifestyle, all that stuff when my daughter was 2. And so they kind of climbed at an equal pace, because I was doing the toddler stuff and this and that. And looking yourself in the mirror is not really all that easy. And it was sort of a deal where I had to just kind of let a lot of shit go and just kind of the biggest thing to change for me as far as kind of breaking my stuff and starting was having a little bit of grace and forgiving my parents, you know what I mean? And accepting the fact that my parents did the best they could with the tools that they had. Now, if I want to do better, I need to add tools to my toolbox, or my daughter's going to have the same sort of feelings and struggles and traumas and baggage, and I don't necessarily want her to be numbing herself with sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever the case, whatever she chooses to do, and hide from the world and feel inadequate and then have this internal dialogue that's going to beat the shit out of her whole fucking life. And so, but forgiving my parents was the biggest, that was probably the biggest lightning bolt. Most of it's all drips in a bucket of water, but every once in a while, one thing would be a lightning bolt. And that was kind of one of those deals where they didn't do anything maliciously to us. It wasn't necessarily that it was a bad childhood, or it was just emotionally disconnected. So
yeah,
you didn't get praise for anything good. It wasn't an I love you type home. It wasn't a hugs and this and that. And my brother was sort of a problem child, demanded a lot of attention. He was a couple years older than me. And so I would kind of grew up the forgotten child. Nobody cares if I'm around syndrome that, starts when you're young. And then same as anything else, you keep feeding into this belief and this idea, and then you get to where you're in high school and you're going through puberty and your hormones are everywhere and you're trying to get this identity and all this stuff, and then you get your first heartbreak, or your first letdown or whatever, and then it's fuck, I guess nobody's gonna ever care about me, and then it just spiraled into fuck it, I'm just gonna be a drunk then.
Yeah. So was it more so trying to escape and numb, or was it this is how I'm trying to survive right now?
I think it started as, it very much started as my brother was a couple years older than me and he was the partier kind of guy and this and that. And then, so I think there's a few different reasons why the alcohol came in, obviously small town, middle of nowhere. There's not a lot to do when you're in high school. So everybody parties and drinks and this and that. And then when you kind of get known for that and that becomes your identity, then it kind of snowballs into you're doing it all the time and sports go out the window and and it's just all that normal kind of high school stuff. And, when you hit that fork in the road, you can, we were raised in and around the AA system. My dad got sober when I was 5 years old. And so we spent a lot of time in and around the AA system, right, wrong, or indifferent. But all the times that we were ever in the pickup, fishing, anything, my dad always had those tapes from the conventions, right?
Yeah.
So when you're 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, and you've been listening to this shit for 10 years, they're all funny stories to somebody who hasn't lived through that life. You know what I mean? Like you hear this guy talking at a podium about getting drunk in this state, waking up in a convertible in the Vegas desert, not knowing how he got there and this and that. And everybody's in the crowd is laughing and the guy's laughing because it's, a humorous story. And now I can see the humor in it, but I also know how much pain was involved making these stories. But in those tapes as kids, we were just hearing the funny stories. And so we're sort of wanting to have our own fun stories. We live a life and do the, not seeing the dark, not knowing about really the darker half of it. Yeah. And then, after a while, it was kind of a deal where it kind of just got to a habit, and then it was a numbing deal, and then it was a hiding from the world kind of a deal. And then it was just, I was a functioning alcoholic where I just, at one point I got sent to a hospital and they drew my blood, and then my blood alcohol was 0.39. Wow. And it was like 9:30 in the morning. I was walking, talking fine. This is like 10, 12 years into it, but yeah. I was overdoing it for sure all the time.
I think I have you beat. I think the highest I ever was 0.43.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Oh shit's right. They were like, how is she functioning? I don't even know how I was functioning.
and then when I got, and that just, and then, your habits are your habits. And that's, when whether good habits, bad habits, until you break the habit or try to at least become aware of bad habits or the habits that you're,
They're learned behaviors.
Right.
Everything we do is a learned behavior.
Yeah. I could have just as easily been addicted to work or attention or, sympathy or, whatever. You get to where you just get used to whatever it is. And then there was
you're too busy. You're so busy going that you forget to stop.
Right. And then, around the time when after my daughter was born, it was kind of one of those deals where my whole, like switches in my head, my whole perspective on life changed. The things that were important now are different than before. I have something that depends on me and all these different things. And so it's kind of that deal where when anybody becomes a parent, you either stay the same or you want to do better so your kids can be better and do these things. And so then it was, the more that I changed and was doing things, it just kind of, the things that I didn't care about kind of fell to the wayside.
Yeah. So I want to dive in a little deeper with that, because I want to know what was actually going through your mind. Your daughter's born, your relationship ends, your dad fucking passes. Mm-hmm. What is going through your mind? What was it? Was it this isn't working, I need to change? Were you like mirror meltdown? What is, give me a visual of the deeper sense of what you were feeling that made you want to do these changes.
Yeah. So my daughter was born, and then the relationship with her mother, we were unmarried and stuff. So it was, we owned a house, but it wasn't like legal paperwork and all these different things, like a marriage. So there wasn't like this big drawn out divorce process. It was a deal where you could break up and just split, Yeah. So it just got to where it was kind of one of those deals where it's like shit or get off the pot. Because if I drag this out and we keep trying to make this work and keep dragging this thing out, then I'm in it for the next 16 years till at least my daughter's an adult and she's not going to take the blame and think that it's her fault that we got divorced or split up and this and that, So do I want to live in this unhappy roommate scenario that I was raised in, or we split now cleanly? All she'll ever know is that we lived in two separate houses. She's like, my daughter doesn't have any memories of us all living together and all this stuff. And so trying to avert some of that, baggage and trauma that would unintentionally be taken by the kids, which is rightfully so, like, oh, it's my fault that they split up,
But let's talk real, because I want to know, what did it look like for you outside of everybody else? I want to know, like, was it therapy, books, podcasts, sitting in the truck, screaming at the steering wheel, fucking ugly girl crying, ugly guy crying?
I had to take a really, really long look at myself and then be okay with the fact that I was a fucking baby that wasn't very good at communicating. And so, like, as much as I wanted to be the victim,
it wasn't working.
I was the only one that saw it that way. It was easy to, it was really hard for me to leave this pity party that I'd become accustomed to over, the years of drinking, and this, the woe is me and everything's against me and the world's out to get me, and, the self-sabotaging, every anytime something started going good, I'd self-sabotage. And then it just happened. I didn't do it to myself. And why would I choose to always be this low and be in this hole and poor me, poor me, poor me. And then it was always, you telling yourself that all the time, that it's not you and it's everybody else. Why is everybody picking on me? And everybody's mean to me,
Yeah.
And so then, and that carries over into all relationships, I mean, it doesn't matter who you're dealing with. And so obviously my daughter's mother, who in all aspects, in the majority of aspects, not that she's a perfect person, there's no perfect people, but was a high functioning adult who had her shit together and, didn't really play into my, poor me kind of shit, and kind of would call me out and stuff like that. And that didn't help the situation, because then I felt like she was picking on me, and then we get in fights and then this and that. And so once it took years. I mean, I probably read about 60 books a year, and I average about 200 hours a month on Audible, and most of it's all psychology, mental health, trauma, like books that are help you kind of figure out, negotiating perspective, all these different avenues. And, but the common denominator typically for a lot of people is that they always want to be the victim, or, start to feed on the attention that they get from being the victim, or, feel sorry for me kind of stuff. And that was me,
I kind of call it like the pendulum swing, where you sit there and you're the victim. Everybody else is the problem. I'm just poor me. I'm just doing the best I can.
Right.
So defensive, right? And then once you start doing the work, it swings to the other side, where you start feeling all this shame and guilt. And then you're still playing the victim, because you're like, oh my God, I'm such a horrible person. And you want everybody to validate your feelings and understand what you've been through. Right. And so what did that look like for you? Was there that pendulum swing for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was that, and it was, the more that I kind of got away from the drinking and the depressiveness of the drinking and the shame of the drinking and the hiding the drinking and all of these different things.
Oh, yes.
Then I was more clear-minded to be able to objectively evaluate my own personality flaws and thought processes. And then the more that I was able to do that, the more I could kind of get out of my pity party. And then the more that and it kind of bounced back and forth. And then it was a deal, because when I split up, moved in with my folks, because that's what you do. Dad dies a couple weeks later, and it was a deal where my dad was on mile 8 trying to get in shape to try to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So it wasn't like sick, overweight, sick, any kind of deal like that. He just had a heart attack or something. So then I'm stuck dealing with my grief, the relationship, new realities, a single parent, stuck in the house dealing with my mom's grief, can't get away from her. It's not like my brother where he can go home. And then it kind of, I felt really sorry for myself, I mean, my dad didn't have like a great relationship. I mean, everybody's going to die. Death isn't necessarily a big grief trauma deal for me, as far as not to the extent that some people do, I mean, it was more of a deal where we just didn't have a real big bonding relationship kind of deal.
Right.
But I went into a funk. I mean, I went into a depression for a while. And then it was a deal where I was still being a baby. And the biggest swing was, so we weren't wrapped in the court systems, and we didn't have everything we figured out as far as custody and time and days and schedules and all these different things. And so we would do like certain days during the week, and I'd always get a text in the, middle of the day, like, hey, what time are you going to pick her up tonight? Da, 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 da. And so like me being the baby that I was and not being able to communicate at all, really. I mean, I wouldn't even say effectively. I mean, not even remotely close to good. And I'd get a text in the middle of the day, and this was like, we'd probably do this like once a month. I'd get a text on Wednesday midday. She'd ask what time I was picking up our daughter. I'd get instantly defensive because I'd react instead of respond, and that was my go-to.
Your go-to.
I'd get defensive, be a baby, react instead of respond. And so then I'd send something snooty back, and I mean, like, when you work in rural areas in construction, I might be 100 miles away from home. I might be 40 miles away from home. I might be 10 miles away from home. So I could be there at 4, 5, 8. I mean, it's hard to say. So I would sneak, say something back to her. I don't know. I'll get there when I get there, blah, 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 blah. Then she would poke back, and then I would poke back. That would go on for 3 or 4 days. And then it turned into this huge blow up that weekend, something like that.
Right.
And we did that, quite a few times. And then, my daughter's like 3, 3.5. I'm out back at my folks' place, and we're yelling at each other on the phone and this and that, da 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 da. I turn around, my daughter's standing there bawling. I thought she was inside. My mom's looking at me like I'm a piece of shit because I can't get my shit together and fucking just be an adult. You know what I mean? Like I'm 30-something years old, and I'm still like fighting on the phone like I'm a 14-year-old and shit like that. And I was like, fuck, I got to do something else. Like that was when the brick hit the wall. You know, it's just fuck. This is just a repeating cycle. You know what I mean? Like
that's that mirror moment when you look in the mirror and you're like, who the fuck is this?
And the worst part is like, I'm, you know, like when I say I'm being a baby about it and shit like that, it's like she wants to know what time I'm going to pick her up for the fuck, and it ain't got shit to do with me. She wants to know if she can make something for dinner or go out to dinner with her friends and not worry about feeding my daughter, or she's got to cook something that my daughter will eat. Like that's the only reason that she even cared what time I was getting back. And if I would have just been able to just be like, well, it's probably gonna be like 7 o'clock. Then I started getting the text message back that just said, okay.
Well, and it's your own guilt, right? It's your own guilt because you're like you said, you get in that defensive mode and you're like, don't worry about what I'm doing. Why are you always worried about what I'm doing? Why are you obsessed? And it's like, okay, right? Because then again, you get to play the victim, but also it's that part of you, like, would you say it's that part of you that never got that attention from your parents, and so then you're projecting it onto her because you never got that childhood where you had that love, safety, and belonging, right?
I would describe it probably not really any different than you know when a chick has daddy issues, right? Like her dad took off when she was young, got raised by her mom or whatever, and like there's this hole that she's got to fill, and she gets the attention from every guy that you guys went to high school with. So she was always flirting with every guy and always, you know what I mean? Like it was the promiscuous girl because she had this this need for this male attention that she wasn't able to get most of her life.
And then everybody's judging her and saying she's such a whore, and nobody really understands her or gives her a chance or explains to her what's going on. Right.
But I think the overlooked other side of that is from the male perspective, or from men, is if you don't have that male presence to guide you and gives you that attention, you know what I mean? The dad that shows up to your baseball games and takes you fishing and is somewhat stoic and gives you life lessons. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have that dad figure that's giving you those life lessons, or and maybe it's a mother deal. You know, my mom was kind of, we could say cold, you know, emotionless, kind of cold, but that's distant. What she knew. That's what she knew. I mean, it's just what she knew. It's just neither of my parents grew up in great situations with a lot of love and expressions of love and communication or any of these things. And so it dwindled down to us, you know, being raised like that. And so when you find a way to get that attention that you're starved for, you'll keep doing that behaviors to keep getting that attention because you don't know how to get attention any other way. Or you're not okay alone. If you're not okay with yourself, it's really hard to be alone. You know what I mean? Without being lonely. I mean, at this point, I'm much better alone because I'm not lonely. But, 10, 15 years ago, it drove me fucking nuts.
You could do it. You can do it both ways now. Whereas before it's like, oh my God, I can't be by myself. I can't, I need that. I need somebody there. I get that. Yeah, definitely. Now, if you could go back to that younger version of you, one of my biggest things is being able to have that conversation with that younger version of you and really visualize and really apologize to that version of you that didn't get that love from you that it deserved, right? Because you're trying to find it in everybody else and you can't find it within yourself. What would you say?
If you want to stay depressed, then keep thinking about the past. And if you want to be anxious, then start worrying about the future. But if you want to be okay, then just live in the day, I mean, and I spent a lot of time dwelling on a bunch of shit in the past that I couldn't change it. I mean, it's not like I got a time machine. I can't go back and tell my parents to fucking act different when I was 5 years old. I mean, the time's gone. You can either dwell on it or kind of let it go.
Yeah. Well, so I guess what I'm really curious about is that I know you say kind of let it go and not dwell in the past, but for me, I am a firm believer that you have to accept all parts of you. So I am a believer that you don't necessarily dwell in the past, but you damn sure that is part of you, right? That is part of who you are. So I'm curious, you do have those parts of you, right? So when you're setting these boundaries, when you're in the dynamics with the baby mama and your stepdad, or the stepdad, right? And you're doing the blended family, what does that look like when it's like, okay, I see these patterns that are from my parents. I see these patterns from my ex and our child. How does that go into the relationship that you have now and the boundaries that you set with them?
I got lucky in the essence that like our parenting styles, disciplinary styles, and all of these different things are similar. I also got lucky because her mother and her dad are super close. And so it's never been a deal where it's like, well, she doesn't need her dad to, you know what I mean? Like we don't have any parenting alienation type stuff going on that's detrimental and makes it more toxic and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, but when my daughter's doing something, she's been a super easy kid. So I'm also thankful about that, but we don't treat her like a little kid, you know, like it's pretty open conversations of this is why you're in trouble. Da, 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 da. But when she does get in trouble, I get a text from mom that says, your daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm the hammer.
It's not our daughter. It's your daughter.
Right. Her stepdad has a son as well. His ex-wife is remarried, has a child. So it's blended family. I'm pretty much single, but there's, 8-10 families from the place in Oregon that we're from that all live here now. And so we all do all these things as a big group because it's just a group of us that all know each other. They all work together, but that kind of deal. But everybody sort of knows the roles. We didn't really necessarily have to have like super in-depth conversations about it or set boundaries or responsibilities and stuff like that. But if she's disrespectful to him, he can do the same thing I can do. I'm not going to.
Which is nice because there are a lot of people out there that it's like,
you're not going to talk to my kid that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and
like your kid can be just an asshole to the step parents.
Yeah,
right.
I've been told that, you're being biased and you're doing that. I'm like, no, I am treating this child the same I treat this child, the same I would treat this child, It's knowing that, like you said, the different personalities, everybody has their own personalities, their own defense mechanisms, whatever the fuck, right? And so it's just sitting there and being very direct and being like, no, this is how it is. And then they get to have whatever belief or opinion that they want, but like you said earlier, you know who you are. You're okay with who you are. So it really doesn't matter what the fuck anybody else thinks or says or does, right? Essentially is what happens, because the more you're going to have that relationship with yourself, the less anybody else can affect that relationship.
Right. And it's an approach towards life, I guess. And maybe it's getting through baggage and this and that. Maybe it's always been there and I just never really noticed it. But it's the same way I look at every aspect of my life. You know what I mean? Whether it's my approach to work or parenting or dealing with, this and that. Like I've never really felt like I was in that much competition with somebody else because their life and experience and what they know and all these different things are not the same as mine. I don't need to compete with you. We're not fighting about this stupid ass shit that doesn't matter, because when I have her, I have her, and I'm an involved parent and I spend time with her and like, I don't give, it wouldn't matter to me if her mom married a multimillionaire. Like, he's not going to take my place. You know what I mean? It's the disconnected, distant Disney dad types.
Essentially, it's just insecurities. If you're feeling insecure about who you are or what you do, then you're worried, oh, well, you can't hang out with my daughter because you're going to take my time and you're going to take, you're going to take my spot or you're going to take my place. But when you know who you are and you have that relationship and appreciate yourself, then it's like, who gives a fuck, right? But, I am curious what that looks like in essentially your dating life, how you take all of this into the dating life.
One thing that we had set up early on was if we started dating somebody and it got to the point where they were going to be around our daughter, we got to meet them first. So I got to bet, and then her mom gets to meet whoever I'm dating if it gets serious enough. Like, obviously, like I'm raising a daughter.
If it gets serious enough, you don't do it like first date, like
no. If they're if they're going to be around our daughter for like, and be like introduced as like a partner or something like that, which, I am raising a daughter, and if it was a son kind of a situation, it'd probably be a little bit, maybe this boundary or deal would have been made or adjusted a little bit different. But also as a dad who doesn't want, my idea of success is my daughter turns out to be a more confident, better human being than me. And whether people, want to think that, if you're introducing your daughter to like 4, 5, 6, 8 women a year, that's not, or yes or no, going to have an effect on them. It probably is, because you're showing them this is how adults act. And so like, serial dating, meeting a bunch of women, if it's not somebody that I see with some sort of a future or, building, something, they're probably not meeting my daughter, unless we run into each other at the county fair or something like that. Oh yeah, this dad's friend, something like that. That's a bit different. But it also makes me hyper selective because my daughter has a mom. She doesn't need a mom, but anybody that I bring in for, long periods of time is going to be some sort of a role model to my daughter. And so,
so if you're taking the daughter out of it though,
right,
I'm curious what it's like when you have that relationship with yourself, those standards, right? Because I was a serial dater before I found my fiance, and I stood by that because I was like, I'm going to go on a lot of shitty dates because there are billions of people. Right? So you're not going to find your one and only the first time you go on a date, right? So,
right.
So what does that look like for you?
I'm okay alone. I'm not very lonely, and I'm hyper selective. And so it's kind of tough, especially in a
small town,
a small town in a super rural area. I mean, there's not a town with 100,000 people within 3 hours of me.
Do you use like dating apps? Do you do
well, a little bit. I mean, it's tough. It's tough in a small town. It's tough in a rural area, and it's tough in a place where it's super masculine, I guess you would say, like, because it's unless you're introduced to somebody, typically it's not necessary. When you're 40 something years old and you live in a super rural area, it's probably somebody that just got divorced or and I don't really drink anymore, and I don't go to the bars, and so it's like, it's not like I'm in places all the time. There's not a lot of stuff that happens around here unless it's summertime at the fair, but there's just not a lot of places to meet women unless you're getting introduced or you go on dating apps, and then it's just everybody wants something that's not even realistic,
Yeah. But what does it look like when you go on dates? I mean, I know personally, I went from like, they'd always want to meet at a bar, or they'd want to go have a drink. So when your friends ask you like, let's go to the bar, let's go find someone. What is your reaction?
Well, you run a risk. I mean, here you run a big risk. But in a town that's super small, say you go to the bar and hit it off with some chick or something like that, like rodeo weekend or fair or something like that, when everybody's out and about or doing all these different things. And you go home with some chick, like it might be some farmer or rancher's wife that's 4 generations deep. And then you're dealing with like an entire fucking family of people that are all from here. You know what I mean? Or like, or you got, I don't think I have it's either going to be probably leathered 40-year-olds that have been sitting on that bar stool for 20 years ever since they turned 21. That's half the town's probably taken home from the bar at one time or another, that has that neon tan leathered saddle kind of look. Or you're dealing with, a bunch of party girl 20-something-year-olds, and you're just like, I don't want to deal with that either. I don't even drink, so I mean, what the fuck am I going to do? You know what I mean? Like, so it's just hard.
You're just going to watch them drink. Which is not
and just get sloppy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I mean, I don't care if somebody drinks, and like I'll have a beer here and there, or drinks every once in a while, or this and that. Like I'm not sober by any means or in recovery or anything, but like I would rather go to dinner and watch, have a couple drinks, or go to like, I'm going to take off in August and go to Denver. Like the Denver flights aren't very much, and go to Savannah Bananas baseball game. Like I would rather do shit like that than sit at the fucking bar every fucking weekend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'll take a girl on a date to go to do something fun.
And I love that because you know what you want. You're not going to settle, right? I remember when I met my fiance, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I don't want to drink. I want to actually feel my feelings and see if I can go past my nerves and actually get to know someone. And so that was what my dating life was like. And so he took me for a picnic, and it was a lot of like little schoolgirl, where like he's sitting there kind of like, and I'm sitting there like talking my ass off, and you're just like, because that's what we girls do when we're nervous. We're like, and they're just sitting there like, okay. But it was that connection of actually feeling those feelings. Is that where you're at? Is that willingness to actually get to know somebody on a more vulnerable level? Or are you still in that stage of, I'm not ready to let those walls down?
I would rather form a connection with somebody and have something real. And so I don't know if it's necessarily walls up, but it's a very low tolerance for like bullshit. And so like when I know that somebody's still, I went on a date with a gal, a few months ago or something. And it was like her ex-husband and every boyfriend she's ever had, where they were all narcissistic and abusive and all this fucking bullshit. She's the common denominator. And I'm like, I don't want to be on that list. We live in a town of 6,000 people. I don't need that fucking bull. I don't need to get involved with somebody that's just going to make me out to be a villain. When it's probably not going to be, like the victim, like you're just me 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And so it's like, are you healed from this, or am I going to be, am I going to be in jail for what your ex-husband did, this whole time?
Yeah.
And like, but I did date a woman for like a year and a half, And it was a deal where, she had some baggage of trauma and these things from being married for 20 years. And she'd never really had, they got married when they were in their early 20s and right out of college, and never really dated, and was from a town outskirts of where I live that's even smaller than here. Grew up around here and all this stuff. And like, it gotten to this point, and I just had to have a very honest conversation with her about like, this is where I am, where I want to go. If this is all of the emotional and time and effort that you can give, like to reciprocate, like this is where it ends, because like we haven't progressed in this relationship over the last 4 or 5 months. Like it's still, if you have your kids, you got to hide me because your ex-husband, whatever, and that's your stuff, and you're, dealing with it or not dealing with it, but this is where I am. I want to keep progressing this relationship. I don't want to sit here and be like a kind of in and out kind of deal for the next 10 years till your kids are out of school, blah, 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 blah. And so like, if this is all of the, effort that you can give, then this is not going to work for me. I'm not going to be stuck in this half in, half out, wondering kind of situationship.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, I mean, this is kind of all I got till my kids are out of school, and this, you know what I mean? And it was just like, okay, well,
Cut ties.
Yeah. See you later. Like I'm not
right.
But that's the awareness and the self-confidence and the, I'm not going to be stuck in a situation.
Make something work.
Right. I'm not going to have, I'm tired of, I'm not putting in 110% of effort for you to put in 30% of effort.
Yeah.
Coming back. You know what I mean? Like either you want to progress and we can deal with these issues together, or you're going to be Miss Independent and then fucking stay independent. Like I'm not, it's just not the life I'm choosing for myself. And that's not a life that is going to make me happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I do want to, we do have to wrap this up, but I do want to, thank you for coming, on this show, giving us a real take on what it takes to actually start making those changes. I would also like to ask you, what closing or ending words would you have for our listeners today with everything that we've talked about?
Be careful of what, be aware and be careful of what you regulate as your comfort zone. Because if your comfort zone is chaos, then you're not going to be able to have peace, and vice versa. And so like, I know that the comfort zone sounds like it's the peaceful place and it's the safe place and this and that. But if you've lived in constant chaos, that is your comfort zone. And that's why you're throwing away healthy adult relationships or the boring guy, or you need that chaos. And so when you don't have it, especially in the co-parenting space and these kinds of, deals like that, if your comfort zone is chaos and everything's harmonizing with all of the blended families and your ex and all this stuff, you're going to throw a wrench in it to get your nervous system to calm down, because when everything's peaceful and you're used to chaos, your nervous system's going to start going into whack and you're going to hit fight or flight, and something's going to be wrong, and you'll self-sabotage it usually, or do something to generate that chaos that puts you into your comfort zone and calms you back down, because this is my norm. So
yeah,
pay attention to what your normal is, and if you don't like it, do things to change it.
Yeah, I love that. And that is what I live by each and every day is, if you don't like it, if it's not working for you, then what the fuck are you going to do about it now? Right. And, I think that's really, really important. And I really want to thank you again for coming on our show. I thought that it was very insightful, and we'll definitely have to have you on here again. And we hope you have a good rest of your day, guys. And for anybody that is out there and wondering how they can possibly change, just remember what I always say is you can change until you're dead. So there's always time for change. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.